Hello, everyone. I'm RJ Kerr, and welcome back to Let's Write an Adventure, our ongoing live stream where we are creating a campaign in real time, pretty much from scratch. We are going to be continuing today to work on the adventure that we devised previously, where we are working on a campaign that takes place in a sort of a domain of dread of our own design, through which the characters uh, enter through a portal generated on the blood moon, and they find this desolate world that was at one point a mega city, that is now built into the sides of this crater that has become flooded, and so we have this kind of ruined water world, with a central spire island and some floating islands made of derelict ships and some earth motes and many other little aspects to give this some cool fantasy vibes to it. We are As we built this out, we kind of realized that this is going to be a campaign level kind of adventure design where we're going to have lots of smaller objectives. We're building out to a much larger campaign universe. And so we have been working on this in stages. Specifically, we've been using the story circle model to break this down into pieces where we can sort of develop individual adventures for each of these components. Starting with you, which is kind of our exposition where we establish who the characters are and the world they're in and the challenges they face. And then we have our need, which is where we sort of create the conflict of the adventure. We have go, where the characters are now seeking out solutions to the problems presented to them. Search, where they're facing all the trials and tribulations that go along with their proactive search. We've got our find, where they find an important bit of information, and we get our twist in there. And then our take, where they're returning with that information, now having to make choices based off of the information that they've gathered and what they've learned. Our return, where is our climactic conclusion to the adventure, where the story question is answered: will the characters win or won't they? And then change, which is sort of our falling action, a little more exposition, where we're talking about the resolution, what happens as a result of the overall arc of this adventure. And we've gone through and divided some of this up already, around a basic story structure, in which the characters need to find an artifact of significant power in order to escape this domain of dread, and will eventually discover that this artifact gives them the power to not only escape themselves, but to perhaps release all of the people trapped into this domain of dread, or to destroy the domain of dread and the evil that's within it once and for all. And so we have been building this out in chunks, starting with need. And so we were working on an adventure last time, that is the opening adventure where the characters are kidnapped by a superior force from a faction led by an aboleth. They are enslaved briefly, but freed from their enthrallment by the intervention of an agent from a Slad-led faction. And the characters must then escape the aboleth's lair, or be re-enslaved. And then during the course of the adventure, they discover the aboleth seeking an artifact uh, of great power, and this is the artifact, which we will eventually give a name to, and that will give the Aboleth godlike control over this domain of dread. And the characters should come to realize this artifact also represents their best chance of escaping this domain of dread, and therefore putting them on the course to finding it themselves. So we had started building that out last time, in the last two sessions actually, where we were using a 5+5 adventure structure for this, where you have sort of five encounter rooms and five themed rooms, which is a very simple way to kind of build a dungeon out that doesn't fill up too much space, but also gives you enough room to sort of play and build a narrative and build a story out of it. And so we have gone through and built out most of the encounter spaces in this so far, including the initial challenge of them escaping from their kidnappers, a fight encounter in our mess hall area here. A reward in the form of an armory where the players can regain, where the characters can regain some equipment that they might need to face the final climactic encounter in the form of a ritual room where we have a warlock and the cultists that are supporting him leading this ritual to summon the manifestation of their aboleth master. Um, and then we also know that at some point we need to have a discovery, a twist of some kind, and we've put that in the laboratory. And so we've come up with 10 different rooms, the rest of them being kind of thematic. And so today I think we're just going to have a very chill day or a very chill evening and work on the art for this, work on some of the map for our adventure. Um, and so, without any further ado, then, let me go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to start working in Krita to get some of this sketched out. So we've got an idea on how all these rooms kind of fit together. So first thing we're going to do is get a grid down. So for that, I'm gonna, you know what, let me get rid of my face so you can actually see what I'm doing here. We're gonna take a paint can, pick any color. I've got blue selected because I'm gonna draw on that later. And we're just gonna go ahead and fill this layer. We call this the grid layer. Um, and then go up to our filter section here, start GMIC-QT. And we're going to come down to grid Cartesian. We can set whatever size we want for that. I've got 60 by 60 because this is a 300 pixel per inch resolution, sort of letter size page. So this will give us an even distribution here. So we're just going to go ahead and hit apply and OK. And then it'll give us kind of a cool 5 foot by 5 foot grid. Of course, we don't want it in blue. We want it to be transparent. So we're going to come back up to Filter, go to Adjust, Color Adjustment Curve, create Filter Mask. And then we're going to right-click on that and go to Properties, change the channel to Alpha. And then we're just going to flip the scope on this. Easy breezy. Now we have a white grid that we can draw on and move about like any other layer we normally would in Krita here. Piece of cake. So let's create a sketch layer here. And let's start carving out some ideas for what this map is going to look like. So we have an idea on how everything is going to fit together. So let's get a brush, pencil. I'm going to stick with blue just because it's easy for me to see through when we start inking down in black later on. But let's see. So we've got 10 rooms here. We know that we have one room that is our slave pen, as it were. And so we're going to have kind of a room where everything kind of starts, where the characters need to escape from. That's probably a kind of a two-part chamber there as well, because they probably have their own area, and then they have a section where the guard stays. And I don't know why I'm getting so detailed with that sketch. I don't need it at this point because we're still kind of figuring out how everything's going to fit together. So we know we have this. That probably leads into some kind of larger chamber off which we probably have our equipment room, something along those lines, because the enthralled slaves come out here, they go to their equipment room, they get their pickaxes and shovels and what have you, and then head off probably to this area of the excavation site, the actual a large kind of winding structure where they're digging away looking for this artifact through uh, the ruins, which I imagine is probably underwater. Not that this is flooded, but I imagine that this is all like underneath, um, like down in the bowl of our world. I'll get my face back up so you can see me gesturing since I talk with my hands. But kind of we have this kind of the bowl, the crater that forms most of this world, and we've got all of these buildings and structures on it, and all that's flooded. And I imagine the excavation is kind of underneath the crust of that bowl, and so I think we're going to have kind of a big area here that's, full of pathways and, and tunnels and what have you that, uh, that have been kind of dug out as they're looking for, um, you know, through the debris of this sunken world. Um, and we'll get into kind of sketching that out later, I say, as I continue to keep sketching it. But yeah, so kind of, various tunnel passages here and kind of a winding maze-like structure in a lot of ways, but with lots of sort of twists and turns, I think. And here, something to kind of navigate, and then it'll probably branch off in a number of ways. We know we need the exit. We have our docks, our harbor, and so this is probably up at the surface. We probably have a room space that's kind of like that, and definitely cleaner than that. But sort of our end goal, and we need our ritual space, which is our climax, and so it probably needs kind of a chapel kind of quality to it. Just kind of putting it wherever. It's going to have to be someplace that the players or the characters are gonna have to go through. And so let's see here. So that's 1, 2, 3. We might need more space than this. We might need to shrink some of this down a little bit and make these 10-foot by 10-foot blocks. We'll see. All right, so what else did we have on our list here? We need the mess hall, which, is probably off the structure here somewhere. Our cultists live themselves, and then they have their quarters in here somewhere. Let's see here. What else? The armory. Again, a room that's relatively nearby. And laboratory space. Since these are kind of dug underground, these rooms might be irregular in their shapes. We're just kind of blocking this out in ways that get things to kind of fit together. And then we'll play with it later. We'll play with it as we go. All right, ritual room. We have a 9th area of some kind. So let's put that. Still don't know what it is. Put it here. Maybe it's. Maybe it's kind of an antechamber between the docks and our our ritual space, as it were. The docks are our way out. We want to have plenty of kind of loops and what have you throughout this, because we want there to be lots of navigational options. At the same time, we also want things to come to a head in our ritual space. So we probably don't want too much connection to anything else from there. So maybe our ninth room is kind of the antechamber. And so the idea is, things come in from the docks, they come in through people arrive from the docks, they come through the antechamber, they go through this ritual room, this chapel-like space, um, and then branch off through the rest of the complex from there. And so we can have branching off point one to kind of our laboratory, and up to our mines from there, our excavation site from there. Um, we can have kind of a central hub area that has access to the armory here, quartermaster's office kind of deal here. Connects to various quarters for our cultists, and sort of a central common room, or a central, common area, if you will. We could have a couple different spaces, so they're not quite all the same. And we have kind of a mess hall with a kitchen space here. That leads to, again, to our excavation site. So we end up with a very cavern-like kind of structure here, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think it gives this kind of a little bit of personality to it as we blend organic shapes with more structured ones. Yeah. I'm sure this looks like nothing more than a scribble to most people, but my brain knows which lines I mean to put down and which I don't. And yours will too when you do this, at least with a little bit of practice. And we're going to ink it in here in a bit here to get a more formal structure. But, yeah, because this would kind of descend down. End up with our docks. Cool. Yeah, so, we have kind of our surface level, and then this winds down, and maybe this is, maybe this goes down for some distance. One of the nice things about maps being graphic representations of what we're doing is that we can put little gaps in there and say, okay, well, this actually is way up on the surface and it winds down, and we don't need to describe the full detail because it's just a winding corridor that really is just something the characters are moving through. with minimal resistance at a certain point. So we can come through, clean up the sketch just a little bit if we really want to. So that we know what's open space and what's not. Although, to be honest with you, you can also fill that out while we're kind of going through the inking stage on this. Just kind of feel our way through a lot of this as we go. Sometimes that's fun. Yeah. So let's further refine this here. Let's give this some more shape. So we're getting kind of a cool, odd structured environment here, which I like. And let's give this, let's mark out some of the channels through this a little more clearly. So we have a little more of a maze-like feel to this as we go. One of my favorite things to do when I'm doing this kind of on my own here is just to put on some music or some ASMR or something, and just something that's just kind of keeps my brain active, but doesn't require a lot of thought, and just kind of find shapes when I'm doing this. Because again, there's not necessarily a lot going on in this space here. We didn't make this an encounter room. This is more thematic. So it's just there to kind of give this feeling of being underground and being lost, not really knowing quite where you are. Because I imagine that there would be this sense of disorientation when the characters come out of their come out of their enthrallment. That we can capture some of that by just making some of these thematic rooms feel non-linear, make them feel a little bizarre and a little less obvious. Kind of come in here and shade in some of this negative space so we have a clear idea of what we're working with. And let's make sure we get all the rooms that we need. We got 1, 2, this is 3. Let's see here. 4 is 4 is this mess hall area. So that's here. 5 is cultist quarters. 6 is our armory. I'm sorry, 6 is our laboratory. Our armory is 7. 6. These will probably get renumbered as we go. Then our ritual space, 8. Antechamber, and docks. And that's not half bad here. See if we'll see if thinking this is a complete pain in the ass. But I think we've got something that feels a little alien, which is good. That's kind of what we want here, right? It's an aboleth's. This is an extension of an aboleth's lair. This is the excavation site of an aboleth cult. It should feel a little alien. Yeah, you can spend as much time on the sketch as you want. If we were going to theater the mind all this, I might not even do anything more than just get the sketch down. Because then the map is really just for me to understand how everything fits together. And once I get kind of some shading in here to know where the negative space is, to remind myself of the negative spaces, and maybe come through with an eraser to clean up some of the errant lines, then I could have enough. Enough to know what I need, at least. So yeah, sketching. We have a map that you could use for Theater of the Mind, although I love the idea of playing campaigns Theater of the Mind because it gives you so much more flexibility. However, I will be honest, I have never once managed to get through a campaign fully Theater of the Mind. Visual aids are just so useful to so many people that uh, yeah, that you just kind of can't get away from them. Not that that's a problem, not that that's a bad thing. It just limits some of your flexibility. Um, but anytime you add to what you're doing, you eliminate some of the flexibility that you had. Anytime you add production value, that's why video games are less flexible than TTRPGs. They add production value, and that limits some of the options that can be taken. Cool. I don't mean to ramble or rant, but here we are, just kind of in our pure creative space, polishing up this drawing. It's bound to happen. My brain's going to go odd places. Just nature of the beast. Okay. All right. So, I guess let's be brave. Let's start putting in some ink in here. Well, metaphorically, putting some ink in here. And seeing what we come up with, what we can carve out of this. All right. So let's say out. Helps if I spell that correctly. Outline layer. And I'm going to guess we're going to go with 15 px size on the Rumpf ink pen that I like to use for this kind of thing. And I will frequently, for this sort of deal, turn off pen pressure just so that I have a consistently thick outline. And let's just kind of see how this, oh, I don't want that in blue, I want that in black. Let's kind of see how this goes together. Yeah, I kind of digging the slightly shaky line work here, especially since all this stuff is supposed to be rough hewn. Cool. Okay. All right. It's coming together. Not be afraid to use Control Z. Not be afraid to kind of go outside the lines here too a little bit. Let's see what we come up with. Worst case, we hit the delete button and we start over on the layer. But I think 15 pixel width was the right choice for this. I just kind of like the size of that line there, I think. I think it works well. Okay. We just need to be careful that we're giving enough space in here for our players, or our characters rather, to kind of move around, bearing in mind what size these are going to be. I think my prediction that we were going to have to go to a 10 foot by 10 foot is wrong. I think that we can stick to these being 5 foot by 5 foot squares. I think that gives us enough space. Let's keep going. We'll put some interior walls into this later. Right now, just the outline I think is enough. Cool. Stuff invariably quiets my head, which I can appreciate on a day like this. Where I could use a little quietness in my brain. It's been a busy day up there today. And it's nice to have this time to just kind of let some of that shut off. And let a different part of my brain take over. I don't know, you ever have days like that where you just need a little bit of quiet from yourself? I, fun fact, have bipolar disorder. And so there are just some days when the chatter up there is not to my benefit. And it is nice to just be able to have a little creative space like this to just let things quiet a touch. I'm not sure I like that line there. Let's get rid of that. Let's broaden it out. Let's do the same thing over here. Cool. So we have an actual shape as opposed to let's give ourselves a couple breakage lines here. Just so we know that there's a separation there. Let's finish out our spaces here, our shapes here. Okay, let's see. But yeah, getting a little bit of just doodle time can do me a world of good. I think it can do a lot of people a world of good. Just my take. All right. So let's turn off our sketch layer real quick. All right. Yeah, I think there's something there. Let's go ahead and let's get the hatching in just so that we know where the negative space is again. And then we'll probably end up calling it at that point just with our timing wise. We'll see. Okay. Cool. All right. So let's find my hatching brush in here. And let's drop this down to. Now what I want to do. To image. What did I do? Is that? Nope. Oh, geez. What did I do here? trying to say that. Well, we'll figure it out. I'm not going to waste any time on it right now. Let's go ahead and get our hatching in here. Okay. Don't actually want it outside in what's going to be water. We just want it inside here. And I picked 60 for the hatching because that's the size of the grid squares we have. So I just find it lines up better. All right, we're just going through and outlining space that we need. We'll probably do at least a double layer on all this just to give it a little depth. And I like to look at some other maps, like professional level maps, because I am by no means a professional graphic artist, to kind of get inspiration for how to do some of these simpler map designs. And as you're probably well aware, if you've spent any time looking at maps, the Dyson Logos maps are a great place to get inspiration from. You want to talk about a gold standard. Whew, I love those maps. Um, in fact, if you've seen the new DMG, if you've got that on early access, the maps in the back of that are all Dyson's logo, and they're gorgeous. Just simplicity themselves, and they get so much detail across with just an economy of lines. Um, big fan. Definitely, you know, a style or a mindset that I aspire to when I'm working on my maps. The more that I do TTRPG maps for my own games, the less I care about doing, lots of color and watercolor level kind of painting to it. And the more I get just really interested in getting an image across with as little line work as possible and kind of letting the imagination kind of run wild while you're playing on the map. I have also found that the really detailed maps, ironically, seem to constrain player imagination, because if it's not on the map, it doesn't exist. Well, there's no table drawn on that map, so there can't be a table in the room. There's no chairs here; they're not on the map, and it's like that's all stuff that we can just conjure up in our imaginations. It might be useful in game. You could turn a table into a barricade. A chair could be used to jam a door, to escape a pursuit. Lots of lots and lots of useful things that just kind of come out of the imagination. And I find that with the simple maps, especially like the Dyson logo maps, that get just a little bit of that detail in there, give you just enough to really kind of seed the imagination. So I really aspire to that level of artistry someday. It's going to be a long time. But got to set a goal, right? All right. Okay. Cool. Not too much more hatching to do here. At least starting to get an idea of what are rooms and what's just negative space. Still can't believe I managed to rotate this thing and have no idea how to properly fix it. That is my day. In a nutshell. But on days like this, TTRPGs, D&D in particular, makes a world of difference for me. I'm curious, why do you play D&D? What is it that you get out of it as a DM? What makes you want to put all this time into creating these worlds for your players? What what is it that makes this game important to you? I'd love to hear about that. Let me know. Okay. Almost have the minimum hatching down. Although I think I'm definitely going to want to go back around the outside and do a second layer there. As long as we get the hatching brush out and we're doing this, we might as well do it right. And once we've done that, we'll turn off the sketch layer and take another look and see how everything stands. In fact, we might just go ahead and do that right now, just to kind of get... Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, my guy. I did all that hatching on the sketch layer. Oof. All right, well, I'll fix that off camera. Wow. All right. Well, what a day. What a day. You know what? I think that might be our sign that it is time to, yeah, put a pin in it for the night. So, um, thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's always a good time to explore this unstructured creative time with you all. Um, and sometimes it's nice to just have a quiet, chill evening with you guys and just hang out while we work on this and create and make mistakes and destroy and create. So that's all part of creativity, right? So. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. All of that kind of stuff helps grow the channel, helps me continue to do this. So if you're enjoying it, I really do appreciate your support in any way that you can give it. Anything as little as a like is hugely helpful. If you like my style of TTRPGs and DMing in particular, come and join one of my games. See how I run those for real. You can check me out on startplaying.games/GM/RJ Kerr, spelled just like my handle here on YouTube. And you can jump into one of my campaigns. I've got 4 of them up and running now. Yeah, come check one out and see what it's about. No obligation. Anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you all on Monday.